Imagination is a magic.
As a dancer in the dance world for a lot of my life, being in a community where the gender binaries are very much implemented within our art making and the art making process, and that being a really tough thing to do because we as like trans identified, queer identified folk who don't really want to fit into the gender binary have to either A, stand up for themselves, or B, shut the fuck up. And that's really fucking, that's awful. That's really awful. And I've been making it a really big point. Like just today, I emailed one of my choreographers that I work for about how I want my body to be perceived on stage. And that was a really...
Well, we don't really have control over how our bodies are perceived, right?
No, of course not.
We have control over how our bodies are represented and how we would like to express our gender identity. And
we have control over that.
We do have control over that,
Absolutely.
especially in the day-to-day. But when you are a performer, and as we are dance artists, working in this case for other choreographers who essentially choose, like, in their own minds, like, what role they would like you to fulfill within their choreography, often that does... or can take away a little bit of your agency within how you would like to represent yourself. Unless you're very fucking diligent and are wanting to speak up for yourself all the time, whatever, which can be pretty exhausting.
Which is what I'm trying to do with the person that I work for currently, is trying to be diligent in my identification and how I would like to be referred to, and that being a very hard thing for them to understand and realize is a very big deal for me. And that's really rough because we're working with them, you know, in a very like intimate way. We're using our bodies and we're in a small space together.
It feels sometimes a lot more sticky than just speaking up for yourself in a work environment, you know what I mean? Because it is that, because you're talking about a job. But you're also talking about someone who is essentially someone that you care about. And it has to be such a struggle to, like, get these people to understand where we're coming from and why it's important to us to represent ourselves in the way that feels most comfortable without, quote-unquote, infringing on their artistic agency or agenda. You know, we are people, that we are not just, like, these little pawns that will fit into whatever they would like us to fit into.
I certainly think that that's something that is in the works, being in the dance environment, and having, and still leaving agency for the person you're working for to do what they want and create their vision, but also really be diligent about your body and how you want to be treated, because that's something that we do have control over. That's something that we haven't really had the opportunity to step up and say. I think that's part of the whole like dance activism in the dance world, or you know, performers being activists in that way and actively seeking more understanding in such intimate settings.
Because the body is this political space, right? Body politics are all up in dance, you know, like we use our bodies as a means of communication. I think that what dance does is that it puts pressure on what various people's biases are, what various people's perception, like how our bodies are perceived, how our bodies are represented. Dance pushes that to the forefront of our consciousness, or I think it has the capability to do so if you are open to that. There's been a huge backlash, right, which is, I think it's good because in some ways, you know, a conversation is starting. Within those conversations that have been sparked by all of this commotion, there are certain things that I would like to address. It is absolutely appalling the ways in which Naomi has been infringed upon, particularly by Lil Mama and MTV. I don't want to victimize her in a way that takes away her agency within all of this, and the entire group's agency for that matter. I think it's really important to acknowledge that Naomi and the other members of Vogue Evolution have a lot of choice within this matter as to how they would like to respond to the things that are maybe outside of their control, the things that fucked up people like Lil Mama say to them that is out of their control. We can't control what other people are going to say to us or about us. We can control how we respond to that. That could be I mean, God, like anything. It could be speaking out, using the media to their benefit, you know, if they're able. I mean, the media is very biased, clearly, but like, you know, I mean, people are eating up this shit or whatever, so like, you know, if they wanted to do an interview, they could. Number 2 would be leave the show. I understand that being the poster child for, you know, the trans identified individuals all over this world right now is fucking a heavy ass load. You know, it's kind of like the ball's already started rolling, but if she wanted to get out of the limelight, she could, you know, right? She probably has some sort of a contract, but I don't think that anything is permanent. Point being is that there's like so many ways in which empowering actions could be taken on their behalf in response to the ways in which they've been infringed upon. And so I want to acknowledge that there is a lot of power that they have, and that they're not, you know, that Naomi is not just some, you know, poor, you know, trans woman who is, you know, being beaten down, which absolutely she's being beaten down, and absolutely it's unjust, and absolutely I don't agree with it, and I'm sending her the utmost energy to do whatever feels right for her, you know, in response to these things. But love. We're sending you love. but I don't want to take away her power, because I think that as a self-proclaimed person who is the face of the she's called herself the face of transgenders, you know, she has got to know, and known previously to a certain extent, what she was getting herself into, and that there was going to be a lot of prejudice that she was going to be coming up against, and that there was going to be a lot of discrimination, and that her life was in fact going to be under a microscope. Those are not things that she decided to shy away from in the first place, and I think that I want to give her credit in the fact that she knows what she's taking on and the challenges that she's taking on, and that it takes a certain kind of bravery to decide to take on those challenges, and then also maybe a certain kind of bravery to walk away from them if that's what feels the best. Or fucking push through and just like be like, all right, I'm sticking it out, you know, whatever she decides to do.